The fog rolled in thick that night, curling around the tall pines like fingers reaching for the road. I remember the way the headlights barely cut through the gray haze, and how every shadow seemed to move just beyond my vision. The mountain air was still, almost too still, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. I could hear the faint rustling of leaves behind me, though the road was empty, winding endlessly ahead. A pale light flickered in the distance, too steady to be a car, too dim to be a lantern. My hands gripped the wheel tighter. My heart beat a soft drum in the quiet. And then, just as I rounded the next bend, I saw it, an impossible shape standing on the edge of the asphalt, watching me. I shouldn't have slowed down. I shouldn't have looked closer. But curiosity, quiet and unrelenting, pulled me forward. That's when I saw it. The road curled sharply along the mountain's edge, disappearing into a low-hanging fog. The air smelled damp, like wet pine needles and cold stone. It was quiet, almost too quiet. I drove slowly, tires crunching on the gravel shoulder. Then I saw a figure, standing just past a bend, a lone silhouette, pale against the mist. I slowed even more. The headlights caught a face, empty still, almost hollow, eyes like frozen lakes, hands stiff at their sides, fingers long and pale. I shouldn't have stopped, but curiosity, that quiet itch at the base of my spine, made me pull over. The car shivered beneath me. Even before I opened the door, I felt the cold reach inside. They didn't speak, or if they did, it was too soft to hear. Whispers, almost curling around the edges of the fog. Unintelligible words, like a language I almost remembered. I watched as the figure raised a hand slightly, but only a fraction. The movement felt deliberate, silent, almost patient. My breath came out in frost, little clouds that vanished into mist. Then I blinked, and they were gone. The spot they had stood on was damp, the gravel soaked, a lingering chill pressing into the soles of my shoes. I leaned back in the seat, trying to shake the feeling, but the car still trembled beneath me. I drove on, slower than before. Every shadow seemed to stretch a little longer, twisting in the corners of the fog. Trees leaned closer, listening. I thought I saw movement beside the road, a pale hand brushing against a guardrail, or maybe a sleeve. But when I looked directly, nothing was there. The whisper returned, faint, just at the edge of hearing. Not a word I could understand, but unmistakably a voice, near yet far, following me through every curve. The mountain air pressed heavy against my chest. Fog clung to the windshield, damp and cold, making the world beyond invisible. I gripped the wheel tighter. The warmth of my hands fled quickly, replaced by a creeping chill. I kept glancing to the roadside, half expecting the figure to be there again, waiting, a flash of white between the gray trees. But only mist answered, headlights reflected in the mirrors. Yet behind me, the road was empty. No tracks, no footprints, only the fog swallowing the mountainside. I tried to speak aloud, though my voice sounded hollow. The words faded instantly, lost to the mist. Silence pressed in, heavy and patient, like it was waiting for something for me. Every turn of the road felt longer. The tires whispered over wet asphalt. Every exhale mingled with the fog, as if it breathed with me. And then I blinked again. For just a moment, a shadow flickered at the edge of my vision. The figure, or something like it, standing just beyond the headlights. But the next moment, nothing, no shape, no presence, only the cold and the fog. I kept driving, though part of me wanted to stop. Part of me wanted to reach out, even though I knew that reaching was impossible. The mountain curved, endless, and I realized the figure might have been there all along. A memory pressed into the road, whispering along every bend, a chill I could never quite leave behind. The fog thinned eventually, the pale light of distant towns bleeding through. I was alone again, but the memory lingered, cold and still. And sometimes when the road bends just right, I think I can feel those eyes watching. The road narrowed as I drove deeper into the forest. Fog lingered low between the trunks, curling around roots and rocks. The night was still but not empty. I saw it first as a faint orange glow, tucked between the trees, like a candle flickering far away. At first, I thought it was a reflection, or perhaps my eyes playing tricks. I slowed the car, listening. The gravel beneath the tires whispered with every movement. Leaves rustled softly, though no wind stirred. The light seemed to pulse, tiny and warm against the cold dark. When I blinked, it had moved closer, closer than it should have, impossible in the still night. Shadows stretched across the trunks, long and strange. They bent like water, swaying where the trees stood rigid, the glow reflected in them, orange spilling across the bark. I stepped out of the car. The night air bit at my skin, sharp and clean. My breath formed clouds that vanished instantly, but the orange light held steady, watching. A lantern lay on the forest floor, old, broken, metal rusted and glass cracked, yet the flame burned faintly inside. No one was there. I moved closer, drawn by the hum of warmth. Branches snapped underfoot, and the fog curled around me, wet and silent. The light shifted again, drifting between shadows. It was like walking into a dream I didn't understand. The trees seemed taller, leaning inward as if curious. The forest floor pulsed slightly beneath my feet, soft, like something alive just below the moss. I reached toward the lantern, cold metal against my fingers, but the flame flickered, untouched by the wind that didn't exist. A faint hum rose from it, low, steady, vibrating through my chest. When I looked away, the light moved closer. Each blink brought it nearer, though I never saw the steps it took. A faint smell of smoke and wet earth filled the air. I could hear my own heartbeat, too loud in the quiet, and beneath it, something else, a whisper I couldn't place. Soft, curling between the pines like it wanted me to follow. I tried to back away, but the fog seemed to guide me forward. Every shadow stretched, reaching for the edges of my vision. I felt small, fragile, caught between the trees and the light. The lantern was just ahead, abandoned but alive. Orange flickers danced across the bark, and I thought for a moment I could see movement in the branches. Something crouched there, watching, silent. I blinked and it vanished. Only the lantern remained, humming gently. The forest seemed to inhale around me, air thick with mist and the faint tang of pine. Soft footsteps, or was it the rustling of leaves? Followed each step I took, always behind, never ahead. The orange glow pulsed again, almost like it was breathing. The lantern's light reached my face, pale and warm. I shivered, not from cold, but from something waiting, something patient. I wanted to look away, but my eyes lingered. Each blink revealed shadows moving just beyond the edge of the light. Then the hum changed. It grew quieter, yet somehow heavier, pressing into my chest. I realized I couldn't tell if it was a lantern or the forest itself. I took a step back, and the light shifted with me. Impossible. The orange flicker always stayed just out of reach, drawing me deeper into the silent pines. For a moment, I thought I heard breathing. Not mine, not the wind. Slow, deliberate, following me. The lantern lay still on the ground, but the forest around it moved. Shadows stretching, twisting, leaning closer. The fog wrapped around me like water, cold and patient. I blinked again. The orange glow was gone. The lantern lay cold, broken, silent. I returned to the car, leaving the mist and the quiet behind. The tires whispered on the gravel. Branches snapped far off, but no one emerged. The forest exhaled, and the night returned to stillness. Even as I drove on, I felt the warmth fading from my skin, and the pulse of the lantern still lingered in my chest. A faint hum I could not forget. And every time I close my eyes, I see that orange glow moving closer through the pines. The highway stretched into fog, so thick it swallowed the lane markers. The yellow lines vanished beneath a gray blanket, leaving only white headlights to guide me. Every sound felt distant, hollow. Shapes began to form in the mist. Sometimes human, sometimes not. I couldn't tell where the trees ended and the figures began. A pair of eyes glinted from the guardrail ahead. Small, sharp, unblinking. They stared until I blinked, and then they were gone, but the chill they left lingered, pressing against the back of my neck. The fog moved like water, curling around the tires, pushing me forward. I tried to slow, tried to resist, but the mist had weight. It pressed on the car, soft and patient, like it had its own intentions. I thought I heard footsteps. Soft wood against the asphalt. Not mine. Always behind. Fading whenever I try to locate them. Shadows stretched unnaturally along the guardrail. Some crouched low, impossibly long limbs reaching into the fog. Others moved upright, silent, watching me pass. And when I glanced in the rear view, the road behind looked empty, as if the shapes existed only in front of me, guiding, waiting. The fog whispered against the car's metal. A soft rustle, like leaves brushing together. Then a faint hum, deep and low, vibrating through the tires. I blinked. A figure crouched on the guardrail now. It had no face, only darkness where features should be. Hands pressed to the rail, knuckles white. I could feel its eyes, though they didn't exist in any way I understood. The car shivered under me again. I gripped the wheel tighter. The mist pressed closer, cold droplets forming on the glass. I breathed in, and the air tasted damp, metallic, like wet stone. Every curve brought new shapes. Tall ones that leaned from the trees. Small ones that darted in the shadows. Some I thought I recognized, though I knew I could not. They were memories, half-formed, pressed into the fog. A pair of eyes caught mine again, different from the last, though just as sharp, glinting orange, or was it reflection? Blinking, I saw nothing. Then something moved behind the fog, closer than it should be. The road felt endless, though the map said otherwise. Every mile stretched, fog thickened, and shadows multiplied. Even the headlights seemed dimmer, as if the mist was drinking the light. I could hear my pulse in my ears, louder than the tires, louder than the hum that rose from the asphalt. Every breath I drew seemed to vanish into the mist. I blinked again. Shapes shifted, forming where there had been none. Eyes, hands, faces, vanished the moment I tried to hold them. The fog was patient, waiting for my gaze to wander. I thought about stopping, but stopping meant staying. And the fog, it didn't want me to stay. It pushed, nudged, carried me along the winding highway. A shadow slid across the guardrail, barely visible. Not running, not fleeing, just moving, watching, waiting. I couldn't tell if it was real or if my mind had lent it form. I blinked again, and the eyes were gone. The shapes dissolved into mist, but the feeling remained. Cold, silent, watching. I drove on, past the guardrail, past the shadows, past the fog. The highway slowly cleared. The lane markers returned, dull beneath the headlights. And yet I felt it still there, just beyond perception. Even when the mountains disappeared behind me, I knew the fog remembered. It would wait for the next car, the next lonely driver. And I would remember, too. The night was quiet, though the forest pressed close to the road. Pines towered on either side, black shapes outlined against the fog. My breath came in shallow clouds, vanishing before it touched the air. Then I heard it, a whistle, soft, melodic, drifting between the trees. It wasn't loud, but it carried, curling along the curves of the road. Following me, I slowed, listening. It was not music, not exactly. It was something older, something patient. Every time the road bent, the whistle bent with it, shifting, curling into the corners of my mind. It seemed impossible, as though it were inside my own head. I blinked. The trees leaned closer, almost imperceptibly. Branches shifted, brushing against one another, or was it the wind or footsteps? The whistle grew faintly louder, not sudden, but deliberate, winding around the tires, the asphalt, the car. I strained to locate it. Left, right, behind. Everywhere, yet nowhere, a gust of wind rustled through the pines. I thought I heard voices riding it, snatches of conversation, laughter, cries, voices that belonged to no one I knew. Inside my head or outside, I couldn't tell. The road curved again. I followed, hesitant, unsure if I wanted to continue. The whistle mimicked every movement, echoing exactly as if it had seen me before. Cold fingers pressed at the base of my skull. A shiver that wasn't just from the night air. I blinked. The mist seemed to curl closer, wrapping around the tires. Shapes moved in the fog. Not people exactly. Shadows elongated, shifting, watching, patient. Every turn of the road seemed longer than the last. The whistle followed, constant, hypnotic. I tried to hum back. just to place myself, but my voice vanished in the fog, devoured by the night. A branch scraped across the windshield. My pulse spiked. I blinked again. The shadow of a figure crouched near the tree lean, eyes pale, fixed, but I couldn't see a face. The whistle softened, then grew louder, inside my mind. The melody became notes I could almost remember from somewhere long ago, somewhere I shouldn't. The pines hummed with it, vibrating through the ground, through the air. I wanted to stop, to pull over and escape the sound. But the road it went on in the fog, it pushed me forward. I blinked, and then I saw a movement, small, quick, between the trees, a shape darting just out of reach of the headlights. The whistle changed, mimicking the rhythm of its steps. I realized I could not see it fully. Only fragments, glimpses in the fog. A hand, a foot, a shadow bending impossibly. Always just ahead, always moving in time with the sound. My chest tightened. The hum of the whistle was inside me now, vibrating through my ears, my bones, the air I breathed. The night felt alive. The pines seemed to lean closer, listening, watching, joining in. I blinked again. The figure vanished. The whistle softened to a sigh, curling around me like smoke. The fog moved with it, wrapping tight, wet, cold. I drove on. The melody faded, but never completely. It lingered in the back of my mind, in the shiver that traced my spine, in the way the road seemed longer than it should. Even when the trees thinned, even when the fog lifted slightly, I could still hear it, a soft whistle, following, always just behind my thoughts, curving around the bends of memory, patient, quiet, and inevitable. The night pressed against the windshield, black and still. Fog clung to the edges of the road, curling around the trees like smoke. The headlights cut narrow slits into the darkness. I glanced at the rearview mirror. At first, nothing, just the road receding behind me, empty and quiet. Then I saw it, a face, pale, too pale, eyes that didn't belong to me, staring back, a faint smile that didn't reach anywhere familiar. I blinked. The face shifted slightly, still pale, still watching, but the expression different. Gentle now, then almost amused. Each blink revealed a new version, similar yet wrong. The air in the car grew colder. I could feel it pressing at my shoulders, crawling down my spine. I tried to shake it off, look back at the road. The fog seemed thicker, pressing in closer. Every turn of the wheel, every glance at the mirror, the face was there. It moved subtly, just enough to remind me it was alive. And yet, when I tried to look directly at it, it felt like it retreated into the glass, watching me watch it. The headlights cut through the mist, revealing trees that leaned closer, shadows curling along the roadside. But the reflection didn't match reality. Nothing behind me on the asphalt, nothing moving, only that pale, unblinking gaze. I tried to speak. My voice felt small, swallowed by the fog and the night. No reply, only the mirror, smiling faintly, changing each time I blinked. I reached to adjust it, but the hands on the wheel froze. A cold weight pressed over mine, not mine, but familiar somehow. It lingered, icy, leaving frost along my veins. I blinked. The face in the mirror was closer now, closer than the glass it should allow. Eyes sharper, observing, patient. The faint smile widening slightly. The world outside the car seemed slower, muffled. Headlights dimmed, fog thickened. And I could hear my own heartbeat echoing, louder than the tires on wet asphalt. Every glance at the mirror brought a new expression. Sad, curious, amused, indifferent, all pale eyes staring, following, but none of them mine. I tried to focus on the road. Straight lines vanished under the fog. Trees became walls. Shadows stretched unnaturally. And still, the reflection lingered. I blinked. The face faded, just for a moment, and then returned just slightly different, like a memory shifting in the corner of my mind. The chill on my hands remained. Not frost that would melt, but something heavier, lingering, pressing me to keep moving, to keep the car rolling through the mist. Every exhale hung in the cabin, visible, trembling. The mirror caught it, bending the light, and the pale eyes seemed to watch even the smoke of my breath. I wanted to look away, to ignore it, but something quiet, insistent, held me there. The reflection was not just in the glass. It was inside me, inside the corners of my awareness. The fog thinned slowly as the road curved. The night exhaled around me. I kept my eyes on the mirror. Even as the face seemed to fade, I knew it would never disappear entirely. The highway stretched forward, long and silent. The mirror caught only shadows now, but the weight on the wheel, the cold breath at my shoulders, the memory of those pale eyes, stayed with me, patient, watching, waiting. The night pressing around the car, thick and quiet. Fog rolled over the asphalt, curling like smoke along the edges of the headlights. I turned the radio, hoping for music or even silence. Static, a low buzz, whispering beneath the usual hiss. Then words, faint, half-formed, caught between channels. I could not make sense of them, but they were there. Cries, almost human, voices I should not recognize. I leaned closer. The static swirled, wrapping around the dashboard, curling along the edges of the car. A warning, perhaps, or a story from somewhere I could not reach. The hum seemed alive. It slithered over the tires, through the metal of the car, settling into my chest. Every blink brought a new voice. A low whisper, a cry, a laugh that belonged to no one. The headlights cut through the fog, revealing nothing. Trees leaned close along the roadside. Shadows twisted unnaturally, stretching toward the car, or maybe away from it. I couldn't tell. The radio shifted again. Static, a faint voice clearer this time. Calling, not my name, but something almost mine. It wrapped around me like a coil. I reached to turn the dial. The voices followed, slipping to the crackling noise. Every station the same. Every frequency humming with something patient. Something waiting in the silence behind the static. I blinked, and the fog seemed to lean closer, almost touching the tires. A shadow flitted across the road, gone when I tried to focus. The hum in the radio pulsed with it, syncing with my pulse. I breathed slowly, tried to ignore it, but the whispers were everywhere, inside the cabin, inside my head. Saw footsteps, faint and wet, moving around the car. Though the asphalt outside remained empty, the static shifted again, words forming just long enough to make sense, then dissolving into the hiss. Voices repeating phrases I could not remember, tales from a place I had never been. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. Cold settled into my hands, a creeping weight. The radio hummed around me, wrapping the car, the tires, the fog into one slow, living thing. I tried to close my eyes. The voices didn't stop. They came louder inside my skull, the static weaving around them, guiding, waiting. I blinked. The headlights cut through a pale shape at the side of the road. Human? Perhaps. A shadow? Maybe. It vanished when I focused, leaving only the whispering static behind. The road curved, slick with mist. Each turn seemed longer than the last. Every exhale hung visible in the cabin, trembling. The voices hummed along with it, harmonizing with the fog. I turned the dial again. Nothing but hiss. But the hiss had weight, a presence, a quiet insistence that I was not alone. The mist pressed closer to the tires, curling up to mirrors. Branches tapped against the windshield. Soft footsteps along the side of the car. Every blink revealed movement, shadows, shapes, hints of faces that dissolved before recognition. I leaned back in the seat. The radio hummed beneath the static, a slow, vibrating pulse that settled into my chest. Not music, not warning, something else. Patient, waiting. I drove on, the fog swallowing the road behind me. Static hummed, voices faded, then returned. I did not know if they were calling to me, or if they were only echoes of my own heartbeat. Even when the fog thinned slightly, even when the asphalt reappeared beneath the headlights, I could still hear it, the static curling around me, whispering a language I could not understand. And I knew somehow it would follow patient until the next curve, the next car, the next night. The fog was heavier tonight, curling low over the asphalt. My breath hung in the air, fragile, trembling. The headlights cut narrow tunnels through the mist. Then it happened, a cold brush at the back of my neck. Soft, liquid, almost too light to feel. I froze. I turned slowly. The seat behind me was empty, the leather untouched. Nothing but the quiet hum of the engine and the hiss of tires on wet asphalt. I shook my head, tried to tell myself it was just the wind, but the feeling returned, sharper this time, pressing closer, like it wanted me to notice. The fog clung to the road. Shadows stretched along the edges, long and thin. Every tree seemed to lean in, listening, waiting. My pulse ticked quietly in my ears. A soft, steady beat, racing beneath the chill that lingered on my skin. I kept glancing in the rear view, expecting something, but only darkness stared back. A branch tapped the windshield. Not hard, but deliberate. I blinked. The shape of something moved just beyond the fog, a silhouette bending in the mist. Gone when I focused, the shiver returned. Down the spine, curling into my shoulders. Cold liquid, almost alive. I gripped the wheel tighter. It pressed against me, insistent, patient. The road curved sharply ahead. Fog thickened at the bend, swallowing the lane markers. I slowed, every tire crunching against the asphalt. The mist whispered along the edges of the car. I felt it again, the brush of something cold. Not wind, not rain, a presence I could not see, close enough to notice, but far enough to avoid recognition. I blinked, and for a moment, I thought I saw a hand in the fog, pale, hovering near the road, not moving like a human hand, but like something waiting. The shiver lingered, tracing the curve of my neck and shoulders. Every heartbeat seemed louder, echoing in the cabin, echoing in the mist. The fog pressed close, curling around the tires, around the wheel, around me. I tried to speak. Soft words, nothing audible beyond the car. The presence didn't respond, but it stayed. Watching, patient, silent. Branches scraped along the roof. Shadows twisted at the edge of my vision. Every blink revealed movement that wasn't there a moment ago. Figures crouched between the trees, waiting for me to look away. I slowed further, trying to shake the sensation. But the cold followed, crawling over my skin. A weight I could not lift. Something that moved when I moved. Paused when I paused. Waiting. I blinked, and the road straightened, fog thinning slightly. The trees receded. The mist no longer brushed my neck. But the memory remained. Cold, sharp, liquid. A shiver that did not leave. As if the night itself had pressed its fingers against me. Silent, insistent. I drove on, tires whispering over wet asphalt. Every curve, every bend, felt longer than before. And I knew the feeling would follow. Quiet, patient, waiting. Until I blinked again. The road ahead seemed to vanish into the fog. Lane lines faded beneath the mist, leaving only gray and white blurred together. The headlights barely cut through, illuminating only fragments of asphalt. I drove slowly, each tire crunching softly on wet pavement. The fog swallowed everything familiar. Signs, markers, the curve of the road. They all disappeared into the haze. Shapes emerged through the gray. Sometimes they were tall, thin, stretching like trees. Other times, I couldn't tell if they were figures or shadows. They shifted whenever I looked directly at them, dissolving when focused. The world felt fragile here, like the road itself might tear if I pressed too hard or blinked too quickly. Every exhale condensed into the mist, forming fleeting clouds of white. I leaned closer to the wheel. The tires whispered against the asphalt. Branches scraped softly along the sides of the car. Shadows curled toward me, patient and still, watching. I tried to follow the lines, but there were none. Only gray stretched endlessly. The fog pressed close, curling around the mirrors, the tires, the roof of the car. Shapes move again. Figures crouched between trees. Or was it the trees themselves bending? Eyes glinted for a heartbeat before vanishing. I felt them, hundreds, perhaps, watching, unseen yet undeniable. The air smelled damp, earthy, like wet leaves and cold stone. Every breath I drew lingered in the cabin, mingling with the fog that seemed to follow me inside. I blinked. A figure stood briefly in the center of the road. Tall, faceless, perfectly still. Then gone. No footprints, no tracks, nothing but the echo of a presence. The car seemed heavier. The wheel resisted slightly beneath my hands. The fog pressed forward, urging me onward, though I didn't know where. Every turn felt longer than the last. Every mile stretched into infinity. I tried to focus on familiar sounds. Tires, engine, my breath, but the fog swallowed them all. Every exhale bounced back as a soft hiss. Faint whispers curling from nowhere, just at the edges of perception. I blinked again. Shadows moved faster, twisting between tree trunks. Some crouched low to the road, stretching unnaturally. Others hovered at the edges of the headlights, flickering like reflections in water. The road under the tires felt thinner now, like a fragile sheet of paper stretched over a void. Every movement made the world shiver slightly. Every glance revealed something new, something I didn't recognize but felt deeply. I tried to slow, but the mist pushed, curling around the car, urging me forward. Even the air seemed heavier, denser, like it remembered every driver who had come this way. Every shape, every shadow pressed into the memory of the road. I blinked, and for a moment, everything seemed normal. The fog thinned slightly. Trees stood rigid. Shadows stayed in their place. But the lane lines never returned. The asphalt stretched endlessly. The road markings had vanished entirely. And I realized I could not tell where the road ended or if I would ever leave the mist behind. The shapes lingered at the edges of my vision, watching silently. Every curve, every shadow, every fleeting glimpse was a reminder. The world felt thinner here, fragile, as if it might tear at any moment. I drove on, tires whispering against invisible lines. Every blink revealed movement I couldn't hold. Every breath condensed into the fog. And the road, it kept stretching. Endless, uncertain, watched. The fog hung low over the mountain road, thick and unyielding. Tires whispered over damp asphalt. The trees pressed close, dark shapes leaning in as I followed the curves. Then I saw it, a dark silhouette stepping off the mountain edge. It moved slowly, deliberately. No features, nothing human, or maybe too human to understand. The car slowed on its own, instinct or something older warning me. The shadow did not run, did not react. It just crossed the road, silent, watching. I blinked. The fog thickened around it, curling like smoke. Every exhale hung in the air, white and trembling. The silhouette paused at the center of the lane, and for a moment, it felt as though it were holding its breath, waiting for me to look away. I gripped the wheel tighter, cold pressed into my hands, the tires whispering against the asphalt. The shadow didn't advance, didn't retreat, just moved with an impossible patience. I glanced into the mirrors. Nothing. No one behind. No approaching headlights. The world beyond the fog was empty, only the shadow in front, and the weight of it pressing silently against my chest. Branches scraped the roof softly. Leaves rustled, though no wind stirred. A whisper slid along the mist, curling around the tires, following the shape as it crossed, as if the fog itself was guiding it. I blinked, and the shadow had advanced a few inches, though I hadn't moved the car. My pulse ticked quietly, racing beneath the chill that lingered on my skin. The air smelled damp, earthy, like wet stone and pine. Every breath I drew condensed into the mist, forming small clouds that vanished almost instantly. And still, the silhouette remained, silent, patient, unyielding. I tried to drive past it. The tires whispered faster. The headlights cut through the fog, but the shadow did not falter. It matched every inch, every curve, moving with the road, with me. I blinked again. The fog shifted. The silhouette appeared closer, though it had not moved a step. Edges blurred and reformed. Shape almost human, almost something else entirely. The mountains seemed to exhale around me. Shadows between the trees stretched unnaturally. Every glance into the mist revealed forms crouched, leaning, watching, yet none approached. The shadow crossing remained in the center of the lane, a sentinel waiting for something I could not name. I felt the car shiver beneath me, a cold weight press into the tires, a chill coiling along my spine. The road ahead seemed longer than before, twisting endlessly to the fog and the dark trees. I blinked. The shadow vanished. For a heartbeat, the lane appeared empty, but the air still trembled with its presence. The memory lingered in the fog, pressing into the tires, the asphalt, the curves of the road. I dared to glance over the edge of the mountain. Mist rolled endlessly down the slope, hiding shapes I did not want to see. The road was empty, yet I knew the shadow had not truly left. It waited somewhere, patient, patient. The headlights caught glimpses of other forms between the trees, watching, crouching, moving just at the edge of perception. I felt them more than I saw them, whispering in the fog that the shadow crossing had not been alone. I blinked again. The mountain exhaled. The road curved, tires whispering softly on wet asphalt. The fog pressed close, curling along the mirrors and roof. The silhouette's memory lingered, a cold weight in the chest. I drove on, past the bend, past where the shadow had crossed. And though it was gone, I knew the mountain remembered, the fog remembered, and I would remember every curve of the road, every blink, every shadow at the edge of my vision. Patient, silent, watching. The highway narrowed as the fog thickened, curling low over the asphalt. Headlights cut only faint slices through the gray. The night pressing on every side, silent, patient. I was gripping the wheel when it happened. A sudden pressure. Not mine. Cold fingers pressed against the leather, firm, deliberate. I froze, tried to pull back. Nothing. The chill remained, seeping into my bones. I glanced down. Empty. Hands on the wheel, mine alone, or so it seemed. But the cold lingered, curling around my wrists, climbing my arms. The road stretched ahead, curving endlessly through the fog. Every blink seemed to stretch time, and the pressure on the wheel pressed heavier. Not moving, not retreating, just there. I could hear my breath. Shallow and quick, the tires whispered against wet asphalt. Branches scraped softly along the roof. The fog twisted around the mirrors, dense and alive. I tried to speak. A whisper lost in the night. The chill did not respond, but it stayed. Patient, waiting. The headlights caught shapes at the edge of the fog. Shadows crouched between the trees, stretching along the roadside. I blinked. They shifted, moving closer, then vanished when I focused. I gripped the wheel tighter. The cold pressed again, like water, curling into the bones of my hands. The road seemed longer, curved sharper, each mile stretching farther than it should. I blinked. For a moment, I thought I saw a hand, pale and translucent, hovering just over the leather. Gone the next instant, but the weight remained. The air smelled damp, metallic, like rain on stone. Every exhale mingled with the fog, forming clouds that vanished instantly. I could feel it, the presence pressing, patient, tugging at the edges of awareness. Branches tapped the windshield softly. Leaves whispered along the asphalt. Every blink revealed movement in the mist. Shapes crouched, leaning, watching. I could not tell if they were real or imagined, but the chill on the wheel was undeniable. I tried to shake it off, to tell myself it was fatigue, but the fingers, cold, firm, impossible, remained, curling around the wheel, urging me forward. The road seemed longer, darker, twisting beneath the fog. Every bend brought new tension. The tires whispered against wet asphalt. The fog clung to the mirrors, the roof, the edges of the headlights. The cold pressed deeper into my bones, and I realized it did not need to touch me to exist. It was already inside, coiling, patient, silent. I blinked again. The pressure vanished briefly, then returned, heavier this time. Not mine, never mine. The mountain seemed to exhale around the car. Shadows moved along the roadside, but never toward me, never away. Just there, watching, waiting. I focused on the wheel, cold leather under my fingers. But not mine alone. Every turn felt longer, every curve sharper, the road stretching endlessly through the fog. I blinked. The pressure lifted again, fleeting, but the memory remained. Cold, heavy, patient. I drove on, past the curves, past the fog, though it pressed close, curling, insistent. The night remained quiet, but I knew the hands were still there, somewhere, watching, waiting. Every turn, every blink, every mile, the cold lingered, persistent, impossible, patient. The highway stretched endlessly into fog. Headlights cut narrow paths through gray, and the world beyond seemed hollow, waiting. Then I saw the taillights. A pair of red glows, close behind, too close. No engine sound, no shape in the fog, just the lights flickering. I blinked. They vanished, then reappeared a few yards back, matching every movement of the car. I tried to speed up. The lights mirrored me, sliding along the road, flickering in rhythm with every turn. The fog pressed closer, curling around the tires, licking the edges of the mirrors, the roof, the headlights. Every blink revealed movement in the mist. Shadows crouched, watching, but the tail lights never wavered. I glanced into the rear view. Nothing. No car. No driver. Only red, flickering, patient, waiting. The asphalt whispered beneath the tires. Branches scraped softly along the roof. Leaves whispered in the fog, curling around the headlights. Every sound seemed delayed, hollow, as if the world itself was stretching time to match the lights behind me. I blinked again. The tail lights disappeared, only to return at the exact same distance, following, matching every inch, every curve, every shift of the tires. I tried to shake it off, told myself it was reflection, illusion, fog catching the light. But the instinct remained, curling deep in my chest. I was being watched, measured, tracked by something patient, unseen. The road curved sharply ahead. The tail lights followed exactly, sliding along the asphalt as though tethered to the car. I blinked. Shapes appeared in the fog, branches, trees, maybe figures, but nothing moved toward me, nothing left behind. The fog thickened further, curling over the asphalt like water. Red glows reflected faintly on wet patches of road. Every blink revealed movement. Figures crouched at the edge of visibility, stretching, bending, just out of reach. I pressed the accelerator. The tires whispered faster. The tail lights followed, flickering. No sound, no presence I could detect, only the lights, patient, insistent. I blinked. For a moment, the lights vanished. A pause, then returned, closer, or perhaps the road had stretched, pulling the distance longer than it should have been. Branches tapped along the roof. Fog wrapped around the mirrors, curling along the edges of the headlights. Every blink revealed new shadows, crouched, leaning, silent. But the tail lights remained constant, flickering red, mirroring my every movement. I tried to focus on the asphalt beneath the tires. Lane markers reappeared briefly, then vanished again under the mist. The lights followed me still, silent, patient, watching. I blinked again. A fleeting thought came. Maybe the lights weren't behind me at all. Maybe they were inside the fog, inside the night, inside me. I drove on. Every curve, every blink, every mile, the red flicker followed. No car, no driver, only the lights, moving with me, through fog, shadows, and the quiet that pressed into my chest. And though I tried to shake it, to lose it in the curves, the bends, the mist, I knew it would not leave. The tail lights would follow the next curve, the next car, the next blink. Patient, silent, unseen, fog rolled low across the asphalt, thick and damp. Every breath condensed into small clouds that vanished instantly. The headlights barely cut through the gray, leaving the world muted and soft. Then it began, a whisper, at first faint, curling through the mist, soft, almost polite, almost unnoticed. I blinked. The whisper grew, forming sounds I could almost recognize, words I could not repeat. Something calling me, patient, insistent. The fog curled around the tires, thickening, pressing closer. Branches brushed softly against the roof. Shadows stretched between the trees, leaning just enough to be seen. I slowed. The mist wrapped around the car like water. Every exhale merged with it, forming fleeting clouds of gray. And the whisper followed, intimate, crawling along the edges of my mind. I blinked. A figure appeared briefly in the fog. Tall, thin, faceless. Watching, waiting. It vanished the instant I focused. The whispers grew louder, curling around my chest, around my ears, around my thoughts. Not malicious, exactly, but unavoidable, patient, relentless. The highway curved sharply ahead. The fog followed, curling tighter along the edges of the asphalt. Shadows stretched, crouched, bent unnaturally, leaning closer with every blink. I glanced into the mirrors. Nothing. No one. Only mist, thick and patient, wrapping the world in gray. I blinked again. The whispers formed words I almost remembered. Snatches of phrases. Snatches of conversation, laughter, cries. Not mine. Not anyone I had ever known. And yet familiar in some quiet, impossible way. The tires whispered against the asphalt. The headlights reflected faint movement. Shapes crouched along the roadside. Every blink revealed something new. A pale outline, a twisting shadow, a presence that hovered just out of reach. I tried to speak aloud, but my voice vanished instantly into the mist. The whispers did not stop. They shifted, curling inside my mind. Following the bends of the road, every blink, every turn. Branches scraped against the windshield. The fog pressed into the mirrors, curling along the roof. The whispers pressed into me, patient, patient, patient. I blinked, and the fog thickened suddenly, swallowing the headlights. The whisper turned almost insistent, forming the cadence of footsteps, soft and wet, around the car. I tried to focus on the road beneath the tires. Lane markers appeared briefly, then vanished again under the mist. Shadows crouched along the roadside, watching, waiting. The whispers followed. I pressed the accelerator. The tires whispered faster. The fog moved with me, curling along the mirrors, the roof, the edges of the headlights. The whispers rose in pitch, quiet and relentless. I blinked again. Shapes emerged briefly, crouched, bent, faceless. Eyes glinted for a heartbeat, then vanished the moment I tried to hold them. The fog seemed to breathe, slowly. Inhale, exhale, and with every exhale, the whispers grew, curling around me, inside me. I realized I was not alone. Never had been. Every shadow, every flicker of gray, every whispered syllable had been waiting, patient. I blinked. For a moment, the whispers softened, as if tasting my fear, but never leaving. The highway stretched endlessly ahead. The fog pressed around the car. Shadows leaned in between the trees. Every exhale mingled with the mist. And I knew the whispers would follow every bend, every mile, every blink. Patient, silent, unseen. The fog thinned slightly as I drove, but the night still pressed close, heavy and silent. Trees leaned toward the asphalt, branches brushing lightly against the mist. Then I saw it, a small cabin beside the road. Lights glowed softly from inside, warm and inviting, but there was no visible entry. No door, no path. I slowed. The headlights reflected off the fog, revealing shadows moving inside. Figures, perhaps, crouched or bending, but when I blinked, they seemed gone. The air smelled faintly of smoke and damp wood. Every exhale mingled with the mist, curling in small clouds around the tires. I stepped out of the car, drawn closer by the soft orange light. The forest was quiet, yet not empty. Branches scraped softly against each other. Leaves rustled, though no wind stirred. The cabin seemed to hum, just barely, like it was breathing in time with the fog. I reached toward the porch. The light flickered, shadows stretching unnaturally across the walls. A sense of curiosity pressed at me, urging me closer. I blinked. The porch was empty. The cabin vanished. I stepped forward, hesitant. Fog curled around my ankles. The asphalt ended abruptly in gray mist. No cabin, no lights, only the soft hum lingering in the air. I turned back toward the car. The headlights reflected pale shapes between the trees. I could feel them watching, patient, silent, waiting. Every step toward the car made the mist thicker. Every exhale condensed instantly, merging with the gray. Shadows moved at the edges of my vision. Figures crouched, bending, or maybe just the trees leaning in. I blinked. The cabin reappeared, faintly, just at the edge of the fog. Warm light spilling through a window. No door, no entry. I pressed forward again, compelled, but when I reached the porch, it was empty once more. The air smelled damp and faintly of smoke. The hum lingered in the mist, vibrating softly through the tires, the asphalt, the fog around me. I could feel it, patient and quiet, waiting for me to blink, to breathe, to step too close. I glanced at the trees. Shadows stretched, bending unnaturally, leaning toward the fog. Figures crouched at the edges of vision, always just out of reach, always watching. I returned to the car, fog curling around my ankles, every exhale a visible reminder of the cabin that was and was not. Headlights flicked across the asphalt. Branches scraped along the roof. The hum lingered, soft, insistent. I drove on. The cabin disappeared completely in the rear-view mirror. But the memory remained. The light, the warmth, the impossible entry that wasn't there. Every blink reminded me. Every shadow along the roadside. Every whisper in the fog. The cabin had not truly left. It waited, patient, between the trees and the fog, always just out of reach. The road curved. Tires whispered on wet asphalt. And though the night returned to quiet, I knew the cabin would return too. Patient, silent, unseen, the mountain road narrowed, twisting sharply through the fog. Headlights cut thin paths into the gray, but everything beyond seemed swallowed by mist. Then I saw them, eyes, blinking between the boulders along the cliffside. Too many to count, glinting faintly in the headlights. Watching, I slowed. The asphalt whispered beneath the tires. Branches tapped softly along the roof. The fog pressed closer, curling around the mirrors. I blinked. Some eyes vanished, only to appear again elsewhere, between cracks in the rocks, crouched behind stones, patient. They didn't move like humans. Not fully, yet they were alive in some quiet, impossible way. The air smelled damp, earthy, like wet stone and pine. Every exhale condensed into the fog, curling in thin, visible clouds. I felt the eyes on me, hundreds, perhaps thousands patient, watching, silent. The road curved sharply. I could feel my pulse in my ears, loud, insistent. The boulders seemed closer now, and the eyes multiplied with every blink. Some low, some high, stretching between the stones, as if the mountain itself was alive, breathing, observing. I blinked again. A shadow shifted behind one cluster of rocks. Not quite human, not quite tree. The eyes glinted as if laughing softly, or warning. I could not tell which. The tires whispered faster beneath the asphalt. Branches scraped against the roof. Fog curled higher along the mirrors. Every blink revealed new eyes. Flickering, watching, patient. I tried to focus on the road. Lane markers vanished under the mist. The mountain seemed to press inward. Every rock, every shadow, every flicker of light reminded me that I was not alone. I slowed instinctively. The eyes remained, unblinking now, fixed, following every movement of the car. Some low, some high, all observing. I could feel them in my chest, heavy and quiet, patient, patient, patient. Branches scraped again. Leaves whispered softly, and the mist curled over the asphalt, thick and alive, hiding everything that I had glimpsed, only to reveal again the next blink. I blinked. The eyes disappeared, briefly. A pause, then returned, glinting between the boulders, crouched, bending, watching silently. The mountain exhaled around me, and I knew the presence would linger. I pressed the accelerator. Tires whispered, carrying me forward. The fog followed, curling along mirrors and roof. But the eyes remained patient, waiting between the rocks, tracking every inch, every turn, every blink. The road stretched ahead, twisting endlessly. Every curve brought new glimpses, faint, impossible. The fog pressed close, damp against my skin. The air smelled of stone and pine and cold earth. Every exhale condensed into gray, and the eyes glinted faintly in the mist. I blinked again. For a moment, it seemed normal. The mountain silent, the boulders still, but the memory of the eyes remained, flickering behind each rock, patient, silent, watching. I drove on. Every blink reminded me. Every curve carried the weight of the mountain's gaze. Even when the fog thinned slightly, even when the road straightened, I could feel them. Hundreds of eyes, patient, waiting, somewhere between the rocks. The fog clung to the trees, curling around the pines like smoke. Headlights cut thin paths through gray, and every exhale condensed into the night. Then I heard it, a low hum, steady, unnatural, vibrating through the air, through the tires, through my chest. I blinked. The sound was not wind, not engine. It moved with me, following every turn, curling around the trunks of the trees. The forest pressed close. Branches scraped softly against each other. Shadows stretched along the roadside, bending, crouching, watching. Every blink revealed new movement at the edges of perception. The hum deepened, vibrating through the car. Tires whispered against wet asphalt. I could feel it in my chest, every beat syncing with the pulse of the forest, the fog, the night. I tried to shake it off, to focus on the road beneath the tires, but the hum remained steady, insistent. The trees seemed to lean closer, listening, waiting. I blinked. Shapes emerged briefly between the trunks. Figures crouched, bending, stretching impossibly, unnaturally. Gone the moment I focused. The mist curled along the asphalt, pressing close. Every exhale formed small clouds that vanished instantly. The hum followed me, curling around the tires, the mirrors, the edges of the headlights. Not loud exactly, but impossible to ignore. Branches tapped softly against the roof. Leaves rustled, though no wind moved them. The hum vibrated through the car, through my hands, my chest, the edges of awareness. I blinked again. The shapes shifted, crouched low, bent high, always just out of reach of recognition. Eyes glinted faintly for a heartbeat before vanishing. The road curved sharply ahead. Fog pressed close, curling around the tires and mirrors. The hum followed, syncing with the pulse of the asphalt beneath the tires, with the rhythm of my heartbeat. I slowed instinctively. Branches scraped the windshield softly. Shadows stretched and bent, crouched at the edges of vision. Figures, or perhaps the fog itself, leaning, watching, patient. The hum shifted slightly. Lower, closer, almost inside my own chest. Every step on the gravel-like asphalt seemed amplified, every turn echoing through the night. I blinked. The fog moved with me, curling tighter. The pines leaned closer. The shadows crouched, silent, patient. The hum vibrated beneath the tires, through the mirrors, into my chest. I pressed the accelerator. The road stretched forward, tires whispering softly. Fog curled along the mirrors, the roof, the edges of the headlights. The humming followed, constant, inescapable. I blinked again. For a moment, everything seemed still. The fog softened. Shadows remained crouched, bending, patient. But the hum stayed. Deep, steady, impossible to ignore. The pines leaned closer, listening. The road stretched endlessly beneath the tires. I drove on. Every step, every blink, every mile, the hum and the pines followed. Inside me, around me, patient, silent, watching. Fog rolled over the highway, thick and damp. Headlights cut thin tunnels into the gray. The trees pressed close, whispering in the silence. I saw it first as a shadow in the mist. A rest stop, appearing briefly, lights glowing faintly. I slowed instinctively, drawn in. Signs were faded, asphalt wet. The smell of damp concrete mingled with pine. I parked, stepped out. The fog curled around my ankles, soft and cold. Branches scraped lightly against the roof. I blinked, and it was gone. No building, no lights, nothing but mist and the faint echo of what I thought I saw. I stepped forward, hesitant. The asphalt stretched endlessly beneath my feet. No benches, no vending machines, just fog, gray and patient, curling into every corner of perception. I glanced behind. The road curved gently, tire lines fading into nothing. The rest stop was not there, but I remember it clearly. Lights, warmth, a quiet hum of life that never existed. The mist pressed closer, curling around my legs. Every breath condensed instantly, forming clouds that vanished into the gray. Shadows stretched along the roadside, crouched, bending, observing silently. I blinked. A faint glow appeared briefly, just at the edge of vision, then vanished again. The rest stop seemed to flicker, impossible to hold, a mirage in the fog, patient and quiet. I returned to the car. Headlights cut through the gray, revealing nothing but trees leaning close and mist curling along the mirrors. The road stretched endlessly ahead. Every blink reminded me of it. Every step reminded me of something that was and was not. And though I drove on, the memory lingered patient, insistent, waiting for me to look back. The fog thinned slightly over the mountain, but the night remained quiet, heavy still. Tires whispered against wet asphalt, branches scraping softly above. Figures appeared along the ridge, pale, frozen, silent, no faces, only outlines, standing motionless, watching. I slowed. The headlights illuminated nothing but pale shapes. The fog curled around the trees, the rocks, the figures. Every blink seemed to make them sharper, clearer, yet impossible to focus on. They did not move, did not breathe, only watched as I passed. The mountain exhaled around me. I blinked. Some figures seemed closer, some farther. All patient, all silent. Every exhale condensed into the fog, mingling with shadows that stretched unnaturally. The road curved sharply. Tires whispered against the asphalt. Branches tapped the windshield softly. The figures on the ridge remained, unmoving, patient. I glanced into the mirrors. Nothing. No shapes behind. Only fog curling along the tires, the road stretching endlessly. I pressed the accelerator gently. The ridge faded behind me. The fog returned to its quiet rhythm. But the figures remained in memory, pale, silent, waiting. Every curve, every blink reminded me. Every exhale, every shadow whispered of their presence. Patient, silent, watching. Fog rolled low over the asphalt, wrapping the world in gray and silence. Branches scraped lightly along the roof, but the wind carried voices, snatches of conversation, cries, laughter, none of them mine. They circled the car, intimate, impossible. I slowed. The mist pressed close, curling along mirrors and tires. Every exhale condensed instantly, forming clouds that vanished into the gray. I blinked. The voices shifted with the curves of the road, moving inside my head as much as outside. Soft whispers. Patient. Relentless. The headlights cut only faint paths. Shadows crouched at the edges, stretching toward me. Branches tapped lightly, leaves rustling, but the wind carried something else. Something alive. Something watching. I pressed the accelerator. The whispers followed, curling through the fog, through the tires, through the cabin. I blinked again. A shadow flitted briefly at the edge of the headlights, then vanished. The voices remained. Soft, constant, watching. Every curve brought new whispers. Every mile carried them closer, until the wind itself seemed alive, wrapping the car, pressing against my chest, patient, insistent, silent. The fog thinned slightly near the roadside. I noticed a ring of stones, ancient and heavy. Air hummed quietly around them, vibrating faintly. Shadows flitted between the stones, impossibly fast. I blinked. They vanished and reappeared at the edges of the circle. The mist curled around my ankles, soft and cold. I stepped closer, drawn by the quiet energy. The stones seemed to hum in time with my heartbeat. Each breath condensed in the mist, rising like smoke. The fog twisted around the circle, curling between the stones. I could feel shapes moving, crouched, bending, patient. Figures just beyond recognition. Shadows that were neither fully human nor fully tree. I blinked. The circle glimmered faintly in the fog, lights shifting, reflections forming and vanishing. A quiet hum vibrated through the tires, the asphalt, the air. I stepped back. The fog pressed closer, curling around mirrors, roof, and tires. The shadows lingered, impossible to hold. Patient, silent, watching. I drove on, leaving the circle behind. But the hum remained in memory, the shapes lingering in the mist. Patient, quiet, unseen. Fog rolled along the road, thick, alive, pulsing. Every exhale mingled with it, forming faces that vanished too quickly. I blinked. The mist seemed to move with my pulse, curling around the tires, mirrors, and the edges of the headlights. Shapes emerged briefly. Figures crouched, bending. Shadows twisting in impossible ways. Each blink dissolved them. Each breath condensed into the gray, forming ephemeral clouds that vanished almost instantly. The fog thickened further, curling into the cabin. Cold pressed against my skin, damp and heavy. Every blink revealed faces in the mist, watching, patient, fleeting. Branches scraped the windshield. Leaves whispered along the asphalt. The fog exhaled slowly, like the night itself was breathing around me. I pressed the accelerator gently. Tires whispered along wet asphalt. The mist pulsed with each heartbeat, wrapping the road, the mirrors, the car in gray. I blinked again. Faces formed, vanished, reformed. Some pale, some distorted, all watching, patient, quiet. The air smelled damp and metallic, like wet stone and pine. Every exhale lingered in the mist, and the fog seemed alive, pulsing with memory, with presence, with patient silence. I drove on. Every blink revealed movement I could not hold. Every breath condensed into gray clouds. And I knew the fog would continue, alive and patient, following every turn, every mile, breathing with me, watching unseen. The highway twisted endlessly. Every curve felt familiar, yet unseen. Fog curled low over the asphalt, hiding lane markers. I drove slowly, tires whispering softly on wet pavement. Landmarks repeated. Trees, rocks, the same bend again and again. I blinked. Each turn led me back to the same gray curve, the same misted asphalt. Shapes appeared at every bend. Some crouched low, bending unnaturally. Others stretched, tall and thin, leaning close, watching. Each blink revealed more, but nothing advanced toward me. Nothing fled, just patient observation. The fog pressed close, curling around the mirrors and roof. Every exhale condensed instantly, forming clouds that vanished into gray. The air smelled damp, earthy, pine and wet stone mingling. I tried to follow the road, but it looped back on itself endlessly. Every mile seemed stretched beyond reason. Every blink a reminder that I was trapped. I blinked. Shadows crouched at the edges of the headlights, stretching along the road, patient and silent. The mist pressed closer with each curve. The tires whispered softly, endlessly, against asphalt that never ended. I felt watched, measured, tracked by shapes I could never reach. Every bend revealed the same forms, patient, quiet, observing. I pressed the accelerator gently, hoping to escape. The road curved back again. The fog swallowed everything familiar, and I realized there was no leaving this loop. Every blink, every mile, every shadow reminded me. The highway repeated, shapes followed, patient, silent, watching. I drove on, tires whispering, fog curling around the mirrors, roof, and headlights. The loop stretched endlessly, and I knew it would follow me every blink, every curve, every mile, patient, silent, unseen. The overpass loomed in the fog, dark and abandoned. Tires whispered against wet asphalt. Branches scraped softly along the roof. A figure stood beneath it, tall, silent, every blink. It seemed closer, though I drove faster. It did not move toward me. It did not flee. It simply waited. The fog pressed low over the asphalt, curling around mirrors, tires, roof. Every exhale condensed into the gray, vanishing instantly. The figure remained patient, silent. I blinked. Its outline sharpened briefly. Faceless, impossible to recognize fully. Yet I felt it, watching, patient, insistent. The tires whispered faster. I tried to escape the figure. The overpass disappeared in the fog, but every blink revealed a shadow again, always beneath the structure, watching, waiting. Branches tapped lightly. Leaves rustled, though no wind moved them. The fog swirled closer, curling along the headlights. The shadow remained, patient, silent, unseen. I pressed the accelerator. The tires whispered faster along the wet asphalt. The shadow grew slightly taller with every blink. Or perhaps I was imagining it. Impossible to tell. The overpass loomed ahead. The fog pressed closer, curling over the mirrors, the roof. The figure stayed, silent, patient, waiting for me to blink. Every mile, every curve, every exhale reminded me. The shadow would follow. Always. Patient, silent, unseen. Fog curled between the pines, dense and damp. Headlights cut narrow paths through gray, every exhale forming clouds that vanished instantly. Eyes peeked through the foliage. Branches twisted unnaturally, as if observing, leaning closer. I blinked. Shadows crouched between trunks, bending, twisting, always just out of focus. Impossible to reach. I felt them, more than I saw them, patient, quiet, waiting. The tires whispered softly on wet asphalt. Fog pressed along mirrors and roof. Every blink revealed new shapes, crouched low, stretching high, always watching. I slowed instinctively. Branches scraped along the windshield. Leaves whispered softly in the mist. Eyes glinted, fleeting, then vanished when focused. The world felt thinner here, fragile. Every breath condensed into fog. Every blink revealed movement. I could not shake the feeling I was followed, measured, observed. I pressed the accelerator gently. Tires whispered along the asphalt. Fog curled closer, around mirrors, roof, headlights. Shadows crouched, leaned, twisted, always patient, watching silently, unseen. I blinked, a glimpse of a figure between the trees. Gone the next instant. The mist remembered, the forest remembered, and I drove on, carrying the memory with me. The highway passed a lake, perfectly still. Fog pressed low, curling over asphalt and water. Headlights reflected faintly on ice. Beneath the surface, shapes moved slowly, shadows suspended in frozen water. I blinked. My reflection stared back, different than I remembered. Eyes pale, face elongated, impossible. The air was cold, biting. Every exhale hung visibly, curling in the mist. Branches scraped lightly along the roof. Shadows moved at the edges of the headlights. I slowed. The lake seemed to watch me, shaping the fog. Curling over the ice, forms beneath the surface shifting, patient, silent. I blinked. Figures crouched along the shoreline. Tall, thin, faceless, watching silently. Every blink they moved slightly, just at the edges of perception. Tires whispered against the asphalt. The fog pressed closer. Every exhale mingled with the mist, condensing, curling, fading. I tried to look away, but the ice reflected movement I could not ignore. Shapes swirled beneath the surface, impossible to recognize fully. Patient, silent, watching. I drove on. The lake receded slowly in the fog. The shapes remained in memory, the cold pressing, the reflections lingering. Every blink reminded me, every mile, every shadow, every exhale, patient, silent, impossible to shake. The road finally cleared. No lights, no figures, only fog and trees, pressing close. The mountain exhaled around me. Every breath mingled with the mist, curling into small clouds that vanished instantly. I was alone, and yet I could feel the memory of every shape, every shadow, every whisper. The fog, the silhouettes, the faint lights that were never there. Branches scraped along the roof. Leaves whispered softly in the still night. The tires whispered on wet asphalt. Every blink revealed the faintest hint of shapes, twisting, crouched, patient, silent. The air smelled damp and cold. Every exhale condensed into fog, forming clouds that vanished instantly. The mountain seemed alive, remembering every figure, every shadow, every hum. I blinked. Shadows crouched between trees. Figures crouched along ridges. Eyes peeked from rocks. All gone in a heartbeat, yet their memory lingered. I drove slowly. The road stretched endlessly beneath the tires. Fog curled around the mirrors, roof, and headlights. Every curve reminded me of shapes that had followed, watched, waited. I was alone, and yet I was not. The mountain remembered. The fog remembered. Every curve, every blink, every exhale. I breathed deeply. The memory pressed around me, patient, quiet, persistent. I drove on, carrying the mountain, the fog, the shadows, all of it silent, unseen, into the night.